The air in Elijah Vance's cabin was thick with the scent of aged pine and wood smoke, a comforting blend that had permeated his life for decades. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced the single window, illuminating a scene of quiet, solitary existence. The cabin itself, a testament to rustic endurance, stood deep within the verdant embrace of the Blackwood National Park's fringes, a silent sentinel against the encroaching modernity of the outside world. Its log walls, weathered and dark, bore the marks of countless seasons, but their sturdy construction spoke of a craftsmanship that defied time. Inside, the space was a sanctuary of well-worn familiarity. Old hiking boots stood by the door, their laces still muddy from recent treks. Hand-drawn topographic maps, brittle with age, adorned one wall, crisscrossed with faded pencil lines marking forgotten trails. And on a rough-hewn wooden table, an array of carving tools lay beside a half-finished sculpture of a soaring hawk. The constant, gentle chorus of unseen birdsong from the surrounding forest served as his primary symphony, a natural soundtrack to his days, punctuated only by the occasional distant cry of a coyote or the rustle of leaves under the paws of unseen creatures. And always, the subtle, invigorating aroma of pine resin, an olfactory signature of his wilderness domain, clung to everything. Elijah spent his days engaged in the meticulous art of wood carving, transforming raw blocks of local timber into lifelike renditions of the forest animals he knew so intimately. A poised deer, a cunning fox, or as now, a majestic hawk. Each feather painstakingly etched, each muscle defined with uncanny realism. Elijah Vance was a man carved from the same resilient timber as his cabin. Though past his prime, his frame was lean and wiry, a testament to a life spent in constant motion amidst unforgiving terrain. His deep-set blue eyes, however, held a profound, ineffable sadness, a quiet melancholy that seemed to cling to him like the morning mist. He was a man of few words. His silence is often more eloquent than any speech. In another life, decades ago, he had been a legendary park ranger, his name whispered with reverence among those who truly understood the unforgiving nature of the wilderness. He was renowned for his uncanny ability to read the land, to anticipate weather patterns with almost supernatural accuracy, and, most famously, for his unparalleled skill in tracking and rescuing lost individuals in the most perilous and inhospitable conditions. He possessed an almost mystical connection to the forest, able to move through its depths like a phantom, guided by an intuition that defied logic. He had saved countless lives, his reputation reaching far beyond the quiet confines of Blackwood, yet a singular, deeply scarring event, the details of which remained shrouded in the past. A raw wound he rarely allowed himself to touch had forced him into a self-imposed exile. He had retreated from public life, choosing the solitude of his cabin over the clamor of human interaction, convinced that he had lost his magic, the very essence of his exceptional abilities. This personal tragedy had left him with a deep internal conflict, a profound fear of facing failure again, of being judged and found wanting, especially after an incident that convinced him his unparalleled instincts had finally deserted him. Beneath his stoic exterior, however, simmered an unyielding desire for redemption, a yearning for one last opportunity to prove his worth, not to others, but to himself. On a weathered shelf above his workbench, amongst neatly organized jars of natural pigments and various grades of sandpaper, sat an old, heavy-duty shortwave radio, its dials faded, its antenna slightly bent. Elijah would often find himself reaching for it, his calloused thumb tracing the worn plastic, though he rarely turned it on. It was a relic of his former life, a silent testament to urgent calls and desperate pleas for help. Nearby, tacked to the wall, was a large, meticulously detailed, but incredibly faded topographic map of Blackwood. His finger would sometimes hover over a particular section, marked with a faint, almost invisible red circle, the forgotten path, or sometimes echoing gorge. This area was infamous, a treacherous, labyrinthine network of narrow canyons and hidden sinkholes, widely considered too dangerous for even the most experienced hikers, and officially closed by the Park Service for decades. No one dared venture there. On Elijah's left wrist, a faint, jagged scar, almost invisible under the thin hair, snaked from his thumb to his forearm, a silent seed of mystery, a lingering physical reminder of an unrevealed past trauma. Perhaps the very event that had driven him into exile. Sometimes, after a particularly long day of carving, he would rub his left knee, a subtle, almost imperceptible hitch in his gait, hinting at an old, unhealed injury, a perpetual phantom limb of pain. These small and seemingly insignificant details were threads of a larger, untold story, hinting at the depths of his past and the profound experiences that had shaped his reclusive present. Far from the quiet solitude of Blackwood, in the glittering, fast-paced world of digital fame, lived Lucas Thorne. He was a phenomenon, a charismatic young adventure vlogger with millions of subscribers across various social media platforms. His life was a meticulously curated highlight reel of daring feats, extreme expeditions, and breathtaking drone footage. He was young, undeniably charismatic, and possessed an boundless enthusiasm that captivated his audience. However, this outward confidence masked a deep-seated arrogance and an unshakable, even dangerous, over-reliance on modern technology. To Lucas, GPS, satellite imagery, cutting-edge drones, and sophisticated weather algorithms were the ultimate tools for conquering nature. He scoffed at traditional knowledge, dismissing the wisdom of seasoned outdoorsmen as outdated folklore or old-timer superstitions. He genuinely believed that with enough data and the right gear, any challenge, any wilderness could be tamed. His motivations were transparent fame, global recognition, and the fervent admiration of his online community, a constant craving for the next viral moment that would push his follower count ever higher. He was a product of his time, confident that technology had rendered old-fashioned experience obsolete. This profound underestimation of the raw power of nature and the timeless value of intuitive wisdom would be his undoing. Also lingering on the periphery of Blackwood, though rarely seen, was Victor Sterling. He was an enigma to most, a former park ranger whose name was now synonymous with scandal. Years ago, Victor had been a colleague of Elijah, a man once respected but whose true character had eventually and dramatically unraveled. He had been dismissed from the Park Service under a cloud of serious accusations: corruption, manipulation of search and rescue operations, even rumors of deliberately prolonging searches for personal gain, or worse, intentionally withholding critical information to ensure rival teams failed. It was Elijah Vance who, with his unwavering commitment to integrity and his sharp, intuitive observations, had inadvertently helped expose Victor's insidious schemes. This act of unwitting justice had festered in Victor's heart, morphing into a deep, abiding hatred and a burning desire for revenge against Elijah. He saw Elijah not as a hero, but as the architect of his downfall, the man who had robbed him of his position and his perceived prestige. His bitterness was a venomous poison, and he frequently loitered around the edges of the park, a dark shadow plotting his resurgence and, more importantly, Elijah's ultimate demise. One particularly sweltering afternoon, as Elijah meticulously carved the intricate details of a soaring hawk's wing, a faint, almost imperceptible squeak, sharp with distress, pierced the otherwise tranquil forest. He paused, his chisel hovering, his ears attuned to the subtle symphony of nature. The sound came again, weaker this time, from the gnarled branches of an ancient oak near his cabin. It was the desperate cry of a young squirrel, no more than a few weeks old, its tiny leg caught precariously in a tangle of thorny vines, high up on a precarious limb. Elijah, despite his ingrained desire to avoid any involvement with the outside world, any deviation from his self-imposed isolation, felt an instinctive tug of compassion. He couldn't ignore the raw vulnerability in the animal's cry. He rose slowly, his old joints protesting with a soft creak, but his movements were fluid and purposeful. He gathered a small, homemade climbing harness, a length of sturdy rope, and a pouch filled with dried herbs from his garden, potent remedies for small wounds. With a lifetime of experience navigating treacherous terrain, he ascended the towering oak with surprising agility, his gnarled hands finding purchase on the rough bark with practiced ease. He didn't rush, his every motion a testament to his innate understanding of balance and a quiet reverence for the tree itself. Reaching the struggling squirrel, he gently, meticulously, untangled its leg from the thorny snare. The little creature, though still trembling, seemed to sense his gentle intent. He then expertly applied a poultice of crushed comfrey and plantain leaves, binding the tiny limb with a strip of soft cloth. It was a small act, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, yet it was a profound save the cat moment, showcasing Elijah's inherent goodness, his deep connection to the natural world, and his quiet compassion, qualities that often lay hidden beneath his reclusive exterior. As Elijah carefully descended, the tiny squirrel cradled safely in his palm. A young woman emerged from the dense undergrowth, her eyes wide with surprise and a hint of admiration. This was Ilara Rossi, a bright, inquisitive wildlife research intern. She had been quietly setting up motion-activated cameras for a long-term study of local deer populations, her backpack heavy with specialized equipment. She had heard the squirrel's distress calls and had cautiously approached, only to witness Elijah's remarkable act of rescue. She was a woman of keen observation and an open mind, unfettered by the prejudices that often clouded the judgment of others. She saw not just an old man, but a person of profound skill and genuine kindness. Her initial assessment of him, often quick to dismiss those who didn't fit neatly into her scientific categories, was replaced by a deep sense of respect and curiosity. Ilara was, unknowingly, the nascent helper. The first outsider to truly see the luminous core of Elijah Vance, a core that had been obscured by years of self-imposed solitude. She would be the bridge back to a world he had abandoned. The rustle of the morning paper, usually a mundane ritual, crackled with an unexpected urgency in Elijah's hands. He sat on his creaking porch swing, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth clinging to the cool air, when his eyes snagged on a bold headline that seemed to leap from the page. Blackwood National Park announces Wilderness Discovery Challenge, new trails to open, boost tourism. Below the headline, a glossy photograph depicted a sleek, modern visitor center, a stark contrast to the rustic wilderness Elijah held so dear. This was the city's latest attempt to inject life and money into the quieter regions of the park. The article detailed new, purportedly safe trails being opened to the public, routes that had once been considered too treacherous for casual hikers. It was, in theory, a boon for the local economy. But then, another name, emblazoned in confident, self-promotional glory, caught his attention. Lucas Thorne. The article lauded him as the face of the challenge, a celebrated adventure vlogger who would lead the inaugural trek. Lucas, ever the showman, had already declared his intention to conquer the Perilous Path, a notorious, long-shuttered trail that snaked through the deepest, most unforgiving sections of the Blackwood. This path, a labyrinth of shifting scree slopes, hidden sinkholes, and unpredictable microclimates, was etched into Elijah's memory not just from old maps, but from chilling personal experience. It was a trail he had personally declared off-limits decades ago, a decision rooted in hard-won wisdom and the ghosts of past tragedies. This was the personal inciting incident, a direct and profound assault on Elijah's deep-seated beliefs about the wilderness and the respect it demanded. Lucas's audacious declaration felt like a direct challenge to Elijah's legacy, to his very understanding of nature's formidable power, and to the sanctity of the wild places he had sworn to protect. It wasn't just a threat to a hiking trail, It was a threat to the delicate balance between humanity and the untamed, a balance Elijah had spent a lifetime preserving. A tempest of inner turmoil immediately engulfed Elijah. His gnarled hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he reread the words, "The perilous path." He knew, with a chilling certainty that seeped into his bones, the treacherous nature of that route. He recalled the countless hours he had spent mapping its hidden dangers, the close calls, the near-fatal accidents he had witnessed or been called to mitigate. Each twist and turn of that trail held a memory of a harsh lesson learned, a testament to nature's unforgiving indifference. He wanted to warn Lucas, to intervene, to shout from the rooftops the folly of his arrogance. The old ranger within him, the protector of both wilderness and human life, screamed for action. He could see, with the clarity of a true woodsman, the impending disaster, a stark, vivid image in his mind's eye. Yet, a powerful, insidious force held him captive, the paralyzing fear of reawakening his past failures, of facing the harsh judgment of a world that had forgotten his wisdom, a world that now put its faith in technology over intuition. The memory of that painful incident, the one that had driven him into solitude, clawed at his resolve. He could still taste the bitter ashes of self-doubt from that day, the day he had believed he had lost his legendary sixth sense for the forest, the very core of his identity as a ranger. He had retreated then, convinced his time was over, his abilities diminished. To step back into the public eye, to offer counsel that might be dismissed as the ramblings of an old man, felt like opening an old wound, exposing himself to ridicule and, worse, a potential repeat of his past perceived failings. The thought of being dismissed, of his warnings being mocked on Lucas Thorne's global platform, was a humiliation he instinctively recoiled from. His hesitation was a heavy chain, binding him to his self-imposed isolation. He wrestled with his conscience, torn between his deep-seated instinct to protect and the profound, crippling fear of personal failure. Days bled into each other, each one bringing Lucas Thorne's audacious expedition closer. Elijah, despite his internal struggle, found himself obsessively tracking Lucas's online pronouncements. Lucas, ever the provocateur, began posting daily updates, each one more audacious than the last, directly addressing the old-fashioned warnings he claimed to be receiving. Some old-timers still think the wilderness is a mystery. Lucas scoffed in one video, a smug grin plastered across his face. But with cutting-edge GPS, satellite imagery, and our state-of-the-art drones, the perilous path is just another walk in the park. No need for dusty maps or ancient wisdom. Technology is the future, folks. He even explicitly publicly challenged the outdated warnings of old rangers, directly touching on Elijah's deepest insecurity. This public taunt, amplified by millions of eager viewers, chipped away at Elijah's carefully constructed wall of detachment. It wasn't just about Lucas anymore. It was about the fundamental respect for the wilderness, for the hard-earned wisdom of generations, for the very principles Elijah had dedicated his life to upholding. The insolence of Lucas's words, his casual dismissal of the very knowledge that had saved countless lives, slowly began to chip away at Elijah's carefully constructed emotional barriers. The anger, a cold, slow burn, mixed with a renewed sense of responsibility. He knew what Lucas did in that technology, no matter how advanced, was no match for the raw, untamed power of Blackwood, especially not the perilous path. He imagined Lucas, lost and alone, in the unforgiving embrace of the wilderness, and a familiar, powerful surge of the protector instinct, long dormant, roared back to life. He couldn't stand by and watch this young man, blinded by his arrogance and hubris, walk straight into a disaster. The thought of another life lost by another preventable tragedy was a weight too heavy to bear. His personal fear of failure, while still present, began to recede, overshadowed by a more profound fear, the fear of inaction, of failing to uphold his sacred duty to the wilderness and to human life. This realization, this profound internal shift, became Elijah's point of no return. The decision, though agonizing, was clear. He had to act. He had to warn Lucas, even if it meant re-entering a world he had long abandoned, even if it meant facing the very judgment he dreaded. He moved with a renewed, almost ritualistic purpose. He retrieved his old leather-bound topographic maps, tracing the treacherous contours of the perilous path with a finger that now felt steady. He checked his old, reliable brass compass, its needle swinging true, a comforting weight in his palm. He pulled out his worn but meticulously maintained hiking boots, their soles still scarred from countless miles of unforgiving terrain. He packed a small but essential kit, a first aid tin, a small waterproof tarp, a tin of dried jerky, and a worn wooden flute he sometimes played to the forest animals. Each item was a silent vow, a commitment to a path he could not now turn away from. He began the long, arduous trek towards the park ranger station, a place he hadn't set foot in for years, its modern facade a stark contrast to the rustic simplicity of his home. Every step was a deliberate act of re-engagement, a conscious shedding of the protective shell he had built around himself. He was returning to the world, not as a broken man, but as a sentinel of forgotten wisdom, a legend reawakening for one final, crucial mission. The quiet rhythm of his reclusive life was now irrevocably broken, replaced by the accelerating drumbeat of anticipation and the immense pressure of a life-or-death situation hanging in the balance. The path was set, and there was no turning back. The Blackwood National Park Ranger Station, once a familiar haven of camaraderie and shared purpose for Elijah, now felt like a bustling, unfamiliar outpost. Its rustic log cabin charm had been replaced by a sleek, modern glass and timber structure, buzzing with the hum of electronics and the efficient, impersonal clatter of keyboards. Bright digital screens displayed weather forecasts and trail conditions, replacing the worn paper maps Elijah once meticulously studied. The scent of pine was now diluted by the faint, antiseptic smell of a freshly cleaned public building. He felt like an anachronism, a ghost from a forgotten era, as he stepped across the threshold, his old hiking boots seeming to echo too loudly on the polished concrete floor. His gaze swept over the young, uniformed rangers, all immersed in their glowing screens, none of them recognizing the stoic man who had once been their legend. He found the source of the commotion near the park entrance, where a custom-built, rugged adventure van, plastered with sponsors' logos, gleamed under the morning sun. A small crowd had gathered, a mix of curious tourists and a professional film crew, all focused on a young man who radiated an almost blinding aura of self-importance. This was Lucas Thorne, exactly as Elijah had envisioned him preening for the cameras, his impossibly white teeth flashing in a practiced smile, his voice booming with an affected enthusiasm that grated on Elijah's ears. Lucas was in the midst of a live stream, his words echoing through a portable speaker, captivating an audience of thousands who hung on his every boast. He was meticulously packing his gear, a dazzling array of lightweight, high-tech equipment that looked like it belonged on a lunar mission rather than a wilderness trek. Drones with multiple propellers whirred softly on a nearby table, their sleek bodies catching the sunlight. As Lucas regaled his online audience with promises of conquering the perilous path, Elijah, his heart heavy with a mixture of dread and a fierce, protective instinct, approached him. "Young man," Elijah began, his voice raspy from disuse, cutting through Lucas's carefully modulated monologue. "That path, it's not a playground, it's a living, breathing beast. The terrain shifts, the weather turns without warning. There are hidden fissures, sinkholes that swallow trees whole. GPS won't tell you where the rockfall was last week, or where a spring has undermined the soil." His words were direct, unembellished, born of hard-won experience. He spoke of the trail's unpredictable nature, the specific dangers that no digital map could ever truly convey. The Blackwood doesn't care about your satellite data. Son, it cares about respect, it cares about wisdom, and that path demands both. Lucas paused his stream, a flicker of annoyance crossing his perfectly sculpted face before he plastered his confident smile back on. He looked Elijah up and down, his gaze lingering on the old man's worn clothes and weathered face. Well, if it isn't the legendary Old Man of Blackwood, here to deliver another one of his quaint, outdated warnings. Lucas scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension, loud enough for his camera crew and a dozen curious onlookers to hear. I appreciate the concern. Ranger? But my team and I rely on cutting-edge technology, not folklore. Your ancient wisdom and dusty maps are about as useful as a compass in a black hole compared to our real-time satellite GPS, weather drones, and advanced topographic scanners. He turned back to the camera, a conspiratorial wink to his viewers. See, folks, this is what happens when you trust old school. They just can't keep up. We're about to show them how it's really done. He made a show of patting his state-of-the-art GPS device, as if to emphasize his point. The casual dismissal, the public humiliation, stung Elijah deeply. He felt the familiar chill of doubt. The echoes of past failures begin to creep in. Just as Lucas was preparing to give his farewell address to his followers, his attention suddenly snapped to one of his assistants, a young man with a headset who was frantically tapping at a tablet. Boss signal's completely gone on Drone 3. It just vanished, the assistant exclaimed, his voice laced with panic. The last known coordinates are off. It's showing it went down somewhere in that old, uncharted section near the Devil's Backbone. The terrain models here are too spotty. Lucas's bravado immediately crumbled. Drone 3 contained crucial footage, sponsorship deliverables, and, more importantly, a prototype sensor array that was irreplaceable. He spun around, his eyes wide with genuine alarm. What? No, that's impossible. Our flight plan was flawless. He tried to access his backup GPS, but the dense canopy and sudden, inexplicable atmospheric interference seemed to be jamming the signals. His face, moments ago so confident, was now a mask of frustration and growing fear. His high-tech equipment, his infallible digital maps, were suddenly useless in this precise, localized predicament. The entire film crew looked on nervously, their expensive cameras suddenly just dead weight. Elijah, who had been quietly observing Lucas's panicked flailing, stepped forward. He didn't speak. Instead, his deep-set blue eyes narrowed, scanning the distant tree line, the subtle sway of the branches, the direction of the swirling dust motes near the park entrance. He listened to the almost imperceptible shifts in the wind, a faint whisper that only he could discern. His gaze then drifted to the digital map displayed on one of the park's public screens, not looking at the glowing overlay of trails, but at the subtle, barely visible contour lines, the slight variations in elevation, the way the shadows fell across the distant ridge. He wasn't processing data, he was feeling the land, tapping into an innate connection that transcended technology. The drone didn't vanish, Elijah said, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through the rising panic of Lucas's crew. It was caught in that downdraft eddy that forms when the prevailing winds hit the southern face of Whispering Peak. It would have been carried into the secondary ravine, just past the split boulder. Not Devil's Backbone. More like 100 yards west of the old firebreak, right where the ravine narrows into a choked gulch. You'll find it caught on the roots of the ancient redwood that hangs over the precipice. He didn't explain how he knew. He simply stated it as an unassailable fact, his eyes holding the certainty of a man who had seen this phenomenon 1,000 times. He even added, almost as an afterthought, "And if you're planning on that trail today, you best hurry. There's a microburst brewing, coming in from the southwest, a real nasty one. It'll hit the high passes in a few hours, probably by early afternoon." Hi, this was his unveiling, an unplanned, almost involuntary demonstration of his extraordinary talent. His deep understanding of the subtle language of nature, it wasn't a boast, it was a simple, heartfelt declaration, born of his profound love for the wilderness and his intuitive connection to its rhythms. He was compelled to speak the truth, to reveal the hidden patterns that only he could perceive. Alara Rossi, who had been following Lucas's live stream from her small, rented cabin just outside the park, nearly dropped her coffee cup. She had been observing Lucas's arrogant bravado with a mixture of fascination and growing alarm, remembering Elijah's quiet dignity during the squirrel rescue. Now, as Elijah calmly, precisely described the drone's location and the impending weather anomaly, Alara gasped. She saw the shock register on the faces of Lucas's crew, even as Lucas himself tried to brush it off. She remembered Elijah's quiet confidence, his uncanny ability to move through the woods, his almost supernatural understanding of the squirrel's plight. Her scientific mind, trained to observe and analyze, recognized the astonishing accuracy of Elijah's impromptu assessment. She grabbed her own tablet, cross-referencing Elijah's description with the park's rarely updated geological survey maps and her own local wind data, and a chill ran down her spine. He was right. Scarily, undeniably right. She immediately typed a frantic message into the livestream comments, hoping someone on Lucas's team would see it. He's right. That's how those eddies form. Listen to the old ranger. Lucas Thorne. Despite the undeniable accuracy of Elijah's prediction regarding the drone, felt a surge of cold fury. This old man, this relic of a bygone era, had just effortlessly outmaneuvered his multi-thousand-dollar tech setup, and done so in front of his entire livestream audience. It was a direct blow to his brand, his carefully cultivated image of technological superiority. He saw the flicker of respect, perhaps even awe on the faces of his own crew members. This infuriated him further. He wouldn't give Elijah the satisfaction of acknowledging his brilliance. He certainly wouldn't let this old-timer steal his thunder. When the drone was, astonishingly, retrieved precisely where Elijah had indicated, caught in the roots of an ancient redwood in a narrow, choked gulch exactly 100 yards west of the old firebreak, Lucas quickly cut his live stream. "Just a lucky guess, folks," he muttered, forcing a laugh as he stuffed the retrieved drone into its case. Or maybe the old man just spends too much time out here rambling. Still, the tech is what found it eventually, right? He then turned to his team, his voice hushed but venomous. "And don't any of you dare mention his name in any of the vlogs. This is my expedition, my triumph. This old man is a distraction." He then proceeded to double down on his public dismissal of Elijah, posting several rapid-fire updates on his social media. Headed out now, ignoring the ancient prophecies from the local seers, he wrote, clearly mocking Elijah, "My GPS is my God, and my drone is my prophet. Tech V's tradition, chas, adventure, always no old man warnings." He even went so far as to subtly imply that Elijah was perhaps mentally unstable or confused, trying to spread false rumors and discredit him further. He wanted to make sure that no one, especially not his vast audience, would ever think of giving credit to the old ranger. His dismissal of Elijah wasn't just arrogance. It was a calculated act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to maintain his carefully constructed illusion of infallible expertise. He would ensure that Elijah Vance remained firmly in the shadows. The following morning dawned with an unsettling stillness. A heavy, pregnant silence hung over Blackwood, the usual symphony of chirping birds and rustling leaves replaced by an eerie quiet. The sky, a bruised purple, pressed down on the mountain peaks, promising an ominous change. Inside his cabin, Elijah Vance felt an unfamiliar tremor of anxiety. He had spent the night reviewing his old maps, tracing Lucas Thorne's likely path, his mind a whirlwind of calculations and instinct. He knew the signs of an impending change in the mountain's temperament, and every fiber of his being screamed that a storm was brewing, precisely as he had predicted to Lucas. But Lucas had dismissed him, publicizing his scorn across the internet, confident in his infallible technology. This knowledge gnawed at Elijah, a persistent, icy dread. The park ranger station, usually a hub of activity, seemed strangely subdued. The digital screens that had once displayed bright, optimistic trail conditions now flickered with vague, cautionary advisories, but nothing definitive. The younger rangers, still reliant on their standard weather models, were preparing for a typical day, oblivious to the true scale of the approaching danger. Elijah tried to contact the head ranger, his voice a gravelly whisper as he explained the specific, localized microburst he foresaw. He spoke of the unusual wind patterns, the particular cloud formations he recognized from decades of observation, the way the animals had grown silent. But his warnings were met with polite skepticism, then outright dismissal. "Mr. Vance," the young head ranger, a man named Henderson, said, his voice curt and dismissive. "Our models show light snowfall, nothing that would merit closing the trails. We appreciate your concern, but we rely on up-to-the-minute satellite data, not anecdotal observations." Elijah's experience, his profound connection to the land, was branded anecdotal, the ramblings of an old man out of touch with modern methods. Unbeknownst to Elijah and to most of the park staff, a more insidious force was at play. Victor Sterling, simmering with his deep-seated resentment and unquenchable thirst for revenge against Elijah, was carefully monitoring the situation. He had heard about Elijah's public confrontation with Lucas Thorne, and a cruel, cunning smile had spread across his face. He knew Elijah's almost supernatural ability to predict weather, especially in Blackwood. Victor had managed to infiltrate a low-level administrative position within the park's wider management system, a non-public role that gave him access to internal communications and data. He subtly began to manipulate the incoming weather data, downplaying the severity of the approaching storm in official reports. He altered forecasts to show light flurries instead of the rapidly intensifying blizzard that was truly headed for the high passes. He selectively filtered out more dire warnings from remote sensors, ensuring that the critical information about the approaching storm never reached the main ranger station or the search and rescue teams. He wanted Lucas Thorne to get into trouble, knowing that Elijah would be compelled to act. And when Elijah went in, Victor planned to ensure he would not come out. He saw this as his ultimate opportunity to discredit Elijah, to finally break the old ranger and erase his lingering legacy of heroism, perhaps even leading to his demise in the unforgiving mountains. He subtly redirected official search and rescue resources away from Lucas's probable location, ensuring that when the time came, Elijah would indeed be Lucas's only hope. His actions were meticulously planned, a silent, almost invisible act of sabotage designed to lead to a very public tragedy. Orchestrated from the shadows, as the sun climbed higher, Lucas Thorne, oblivious to the mounting danger, began his ascent into the perilous path. His helmet-mounted camera whirred, capturing every confident stride, every boastful pronouncement. "Look at this, folks," he crowed into his microphone, his voice echoing in the vast, empty wilderness. "The perilous path is practically a nature walk. All those warnings just hype from the old guard. See clear skies, gentle breeze. Technology wins again." He pointed triumphantly at his GPS device, its screen glowing brightly, showing him precisely on the designated, yet treacherous, trail. He even veered off into a supposedly undiscovered shortcut he had painstakingly charted using satellite imagery. Confident in his superior navigation skills, then, as if a switch had been flipped, the mountain turned. Without warning, the sky ripped open, unleashing a furious blizzard. The light snowfall predicted by official channels morphed into a blinding vortex of driving snow and howling winds. Visibility plummeted to mere feet. The temperature, which had been unseasonably warm, plummeted with terrifying speed, dropping dozens of degrees in minutes. Lucas, caught completely off guard, stumbled. The shortcut he had chosen, a narrow, slippery ledge, gave way beneath him. He plunged into a deep, icy crevice, his leg twisting at an unnatural angle as he landed, a sharp, searing pain exploding through his body. His expensive satellite phone, knocked from his grip, bounced off the unforgiving rock and vanished into the swirling snow. His cutting-edge drone, momentarily caught in a powerful downdraft, spun wildly out of control before crashing into the icy depths of the ravine, its signal dying instantly. He was trapped, injured, and utterly cut off from the world, his technological lifeline severed in an instant. The perilous path. The very trail Lucas had so arrogantly dismissed now became a symbolic arena for Elijah. It was the same unforgiving landscape where Elijah had once faced his own deepest fears, where he had made the fateful decision that had haunted him for years. This place was not just a trail, it was a crucible, a silent witness to past tragedies. And now, it beckoned him back, daring him to confront the ghosts of his own perceived failures. The mountain in its fury was demanding a reckoning. News of Lucas Thorne's disappearance, though initially downplayed due to Victor Sterling's machinations, slowly began to filter through the park. Official search and rescue teams were dispatched, but they quickly encountered insurmountable obstacles. The blizzard intensified, making aerial reconnaissance impossible. Ground teams, relying on standard grid search patterns and GPS coordinates, found themselves battling blinding snow and disorienting winds. Their advanced equipment, so reliable in ordinary conditions, faltered in the extreme cold and the electromagnetic interference caused by the storm. They were working blind, unable to pinpoint Lucas's precise location. Elijah, back at the ranger station, found himself in a suffocating bubble of frustration. He knew, with a certainty that throbbed in his bones, exactly where Lucas would have ended up, his intuition piercing through the noise of the official reports. He tried to offer his expertise to point out the specific, treacherous microclimates and hidden fissures that would trap an inexperienced hiker, the places where Lucas's shortcut would inevitably lead him. He explained the unique wind patterns that would have pushed a falling body into that specific ravine. But again, his insights were dismissed. "Mr. Vance, why don't we appreciate your historical knowledge of the park?" A young search and rescue commander said, his tone patronizing. "But we have protocols, we have coordinates, we're following procedure. Your feelings don't factor into a modern rescue operation." Elijah was marginalized, his lifetime of intimate knowledge of Blackwood deemed irrelevant. He was forced to confront this immense challenge almost singularly alone, battling not just the elements, but the stubborn pride and bureaucratic inertia of the very system he had once been a part of. The park, his home, his life's devotion, had turned its back on him. The pressure intensified with every passing minute. The park radio crackled with increasingly desperate reports, temperatures dropping rapidly, hypothermia risk extreme, visibility zero. Lucas Thorne, injured and exposed, was undoubtedly succumbing to the brutal cold. Elijah knew, with chilling certainty, that the young man had only a few hours, perhaps less, before the cold claimed him. Every tick of the clock was a hammer blow, driving home the urgency of the situation. He imagined Lucas, shivering, alone, his arrogant confidence replaced by sheer terror. He remembered the faint, jagged scar on his own wrist, the memory of his past failure burning like a brand. He could not, would not, allow history to repeat itself. He would not stand by while the life was lost. With a grim determination that hardened his old features, Elijah made his choice. He would go in, alone. He silently gathered his old, familiar gear, his meticulously sharpened survival knife, a length of specialized climbing rope, a small, insulated thermal blanket, and a flask of hot tea. He exchanged a knowing glance with Ilara Royce, who had arrived at the ranger station, her face pale with worry, having heard the escalating reports. She didn't question his decision. She simply handed him a small, blinking device. "It's a high-frequency tracker. Ranger Vance," she whispered, her voice urgent. "It's not GPS, but it transmits a unique signal that should cut through the interference. I've programmed it to your unique biometric signature. Just stay safe." Elijah nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He strapped the device to his wrist, just above his old scar. As the blizzard howled its furious symphony, Elijah Vance, the forgotten legend, slipped silently into the raging storm. He bypassed the main, heavily monitored trails, opting instead for the ancient, forgotten paths that only he knew, ghosting through the whiteout. He moved by instinct, by the subtle whisper of the wind against his cheek, by the almost imperceptible changes in the terrain that only his seasoned feet could feel. He was not just tracking a lost hiker, he was racing against time, against the fury of the mountain, and against the crushing weight of his own past. The ultimate test had begun. The blizzard, a furious, swirling maelstrom of white, seemed to have taken on a life of its own, an enraged entity determined to reclaim the mountain. Visibility was measured in inches, the howling wind a deafening roar that swallowed all other sounds. Yet, through this blinding chaos, Elijah Vance pressed on, his form a dark, resolute shadow against the unforgiving canvas of the snow. His old boots, once again traversing familiar yet now treacherous ground, found purchase on invisible ledges, his gnarled hands instinctively reaching for hidden roots and jagged rock faces. He wasn't relying on sight, or even conscious thought. He was moving by a deeper, primal instinct, a symphony of forgotten senses that had been reawakened by the sheer urgency of the moment. Every gust of wind whispered clues. Every subtle shift in the terrain confirmed his internal map. He felt the mountain, read its fury, and, impossibly, found a path through its heart. Hours blurred into an eternity. His lungs ached with the biting cold. His muscles screamed in protest. But he pushed through the pain, fueled by an unwavering resolve and the chilling image of Lucas Thorne, alone and freezing. He imagined the young man's arrogance stripped away, replaced by raw terror, and a fierce, protective compassion swelled within him. He followed the whispers of the wind, the almost imperceptible changes in air pressure, until he detected a faint, metallic scent, the lingering aroma of Lucas's advanced, but now useless, gear. He moved closer, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Then, a faint, almost imperceptible groan, barely audible above the storm's shriek, reached his ears. He was close. With a final desperate burst of energy, Elijah plunged through a drift of snow and found him. Lucas Thorne, a pathetic huddle of high-tech gear and human vulnerability, lay crumpled at the bottom of a narrow, snow-choked crevice. His left leg was twisted at a grotesque angle, his face ashen with cold and pain, his lips a faint blue. He was unconscious, barely breathing, a thin sheen of ice clinging to his eyelashes. A large, jagged slab of ice, dislodged by his fall, pressed heavily against his injured leg, pinning him, sealing his fate. He was hypothermic, on the very precipice of death. This was the Nin Tho moment. Elijah, despite his profound exhaustion, immediately assessed the situation. He tried to dislodge the ice slab, grunting with effort, but it was massive, unyielding, fused to the rock by the relentless cold. He tried to shift Lucas, to pull him free, but the young man's weight, combined with the crushing pressure of the ice, made it impossible. His own strength, so formidable in his youth, now felt inadequate, betraying him in the face of this insurmountable obstacle. The blizzard intensified, the wind a banshee's wail, threatening to bury them both. Despair, cold and insidious, began to creep into Elijah's heart. mirroring the bitter cold of the crevice. Have I truly lost it, he thought, the old doubts resurfacing, gnawing at his resolve. Is this it? Another failure? He clutched at his chest, his breath ragged, the ghost of his past failure rising to mock him, threatening to paralyze him completely. Just as the last vestiges of hope threatened to vanish, a faint, almost melodic beep cut through the storm's roar. It was his old shortwave radio, strapped to his belt, crackling to life. And then a clear, resolute voice, tinged with urgency, spoke through the static. Ranger Vance, this is Alara Rossi. I'm receiving your unique biometric signature from the tracker. You are approximately 20 meters from Lucas Thorne's last known coordinates, at the base of the Split-Tooth Ridge. Just as you predicted. I have relayed your precise location to Search and Rescue Command. They are en route. Stay where you are. Hold on. A jolt of adrenaline, fresh hope, coursed through Elijah. Alara, the young woman with the sharp mind and the unyielding belief in him. She had used the tracker, the very device he had dismissed as a trifle, to guide the rescue teams directly to him. His precise calculations, his almost mystical understanding of the mountain's nuances, had been validated. And now, the professional, technology-reliant search and rescue teams, who had dismissed his wisdom, were being guided by it. Within minutes, the distant whir of a powerful snowmobile, growing louder even amidst the blizzard, reached Elijah's ears. Then the blinding beam of headlamps pierced the whiteout. 2 snowmobiles, followed by a team of highly trained paramedics and search and rescue personnel, appeared at the edge of the crevice. They were astonished to find Elijah alive and conscious, meticulously insulating Lucas with his thermal blanket, his old hands working with a practiced precision that belied his age. "Ranger Vance," shouted Commander Davies, the very man who had dismissed Elijah's warnings just hours before. His face, visible in the harsh light of the headlamps, was a mask of disbelief and burgeoning awe. "How did you— We couldn't get within miles of this spot with our traditional navigation." Elijah, his voice raspy, simply gestured towards Lucas. "He's hypothermic. Broken leg. We need to get him out." "That ice slab?" The rescue team, now armed with Elijah's direct, precise instructions, worked with astonishing speed. They used specialized inflatable lifting bags and a series of powerful jacks to carefully, slowly, dislodge the ice slab. Within minutes, Lucas was free. He was carefully strapped onto a stretcher, then swiftly loaded onto a waiting snowmobile. As they prepared to leave, Commander Davies approached Elijah, his helmet removed, revealing a face etched with profound respect. "Ranger Vance," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "You are a legend. Your knowledge of this mountain, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. You saved this young man's life when our technology failed." His tone, once patronizing, was now tinged with genuine reverence. The other rescue workers, many of whom had doubted Elijah, nodded in silent agreement, their eyes reflecting newfound admiration. News of Lucas Thorne's miraculous rescue and the almost unbelievable role of the old ranger in the blizzard spread like wildfire. Initial reports of Lucas's disappearance, already tinged with public anxiety, now exploded into a viral sensation. The story of his public mockery of Elijah, followed by the old ranger's heroic, solitary rescue, became the most talked-about event in the country. Lucas Thorne, recovering in the hospital, watched the news reports from his bed, his face pale, not just from the cold, but from the searing heat of shame and remorse. When he was well enough, Lucas insisted on a live video conference from his hospital room, broadcasting to his millions of followers. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a quiet, almost broken humility. "Folks," he began, his voice hoarse, "I stand before you today a deeply humbled man. I was arrogant. I was foolish. I believed my gadgets, my algorithms that were superior to the raw, hard-won wisdom of those who truly understand this planet. I publicly mocked a man who literally holds the secrets of these mountains in his heart. And that man, he saved my life. He then recounted the entire story, detailing Elijah's warnings, his own dismissive arrogance, and Elijah's unbelievable ability to navigate the storm and find him when every high-tech search party had failed. Ranger Elijah Vance is not just a park ranger, Lucas declared, his voice thick with emotion. He is a living legend, a testament to true wisdom. I owe him my life. And I will dedicate my platform, from this day forward, to promoting respect for traditional knowledge, for the wisdom of the land, and for the true heroes like Ranger Vance who protect it. The video went instantly viral. His millions of followers, who had previously cheered his arrogance, now transitioned from initial disbelief and skepticism to a profound, overwhelming wave of awe and admiration. They flooded the comment section with messages of support for Elijah, hailing him as a national hero. Victor Sterling, who had been quietly monitoring the news, watched the story unfold from his dingy apartment, a cheap bottle of whiskey clutched in his hand. His face, usually a mask of sneering cynicism, was now contorted with unadulterated fury. His meticulously crafted plan to discredit Elijah, to see him fail or even perish in the wilderness, had not only backfired spectacularly but had elevated his hated rival to a national hero. The public, whipped into a frenzy of admiration for Elijah, now began to demand an investigation into why official search efforts had been so slow, so inefficient. The spotlight was turning towards the systemic failures within the park management, threatening to expose Victor's insidious machinations. He hurled the bottle against the wall, its shattered glass mirroring the fragments of his ruined reputation and his utterly failed revenge. He had sought to destroy Elijah, and in doing so, he had utterly destroyed himself. The vindication for Elijah Vance was complete, undeniable, and universally celebrated. Not only was Lucas Thorne saved, but his own integrity, his unparalleled skill, and his lifelong dedication to Blackwood were now recognized on a national stage. The quiet hermit, who had once shrunk from public view, was now hailed as the true guardian of the wilderness, a beacon of wisdom in a world increasingly reliant on fleeting technology. The fallout from Lucas Thorne's miraculous rescue and the subsequent revelation of Elijah Vance's pivotal role ripped through the Blackwood National Park Service like a wildfire. Victor Sterling, the architect of the subtle sabotage, found his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the relentless scrutiny of a public hungry for answers. The initial investigation into the mishandling of Lucas Thorne's rescue, spurred by intense media pressure and public outcry, quickly unmasked Victor's insidious machinations. Sarah Jenkins, a diligent young analyst from the park's administrative office, who had always harbored suspicions about Victor's questionable methods, quietly and meticulously gathered evidence of his deliberate data manipulation, his suppression of critical weather warnings, and his misdirection of rescue resources. Her findings were damning, a meticulous paper trail of deceit that exposed Victor's profound greed and unquenchable thirst for petty revenge. He hadn't just sabotaged one rescue, he had systematically undermined park safety protocols for years, a dark undercurrent of corruption beneath the surface of public service. Facing overwhelming evidence, immediate termination, and the chilling prospect of criminal charges for endangering lives and obstructing justice, Victor Sterling vanished from the public eye. His name became a byword for treachery, his once coveted position reduced to a footnote in a scandal. His collapse was absolute, a fate entirely commensurate with his decades of insidious deceit and the calculated malice he had unleashed upon Elijah and, indirectly, upon the very park he was sworn to protect. He was a cautionary tale, a stark example of how unchecked ambition could devour a soul. Arthur Pembroke, the CEO of Zenith Bank, though far removed from the Blackwood wilderness, had followed the unfolding drama with a keen personal interest. The story of Elijah Vance, the quiet, principled ranger, resonated deeply with him, recalling a similar yet profound act of kindness he had witnessed in his own life. He had been quietly arranging for a private investigator to look into Reginald Sterling's past conduct, a slow-burning suspicion that had been confirmed in a devastating internal report. Now, seeing Elijah's heroism, Pembroke felt a renewed sense of purpose. He flew to Blackwood himself, not in a private jet, but in a small chartered plane, landing on a dusty airstrip near the park. He sought out Elijah Vance at his cabin, a man of immense financial power humbling himself before a quiet man of the earth. "Mr. Vance," Pembroke began, his voice gravelly with genuine emotion, as he stood on Elijah's rustic porch, the scent of pine thick in the air. "My deepest apologies for the way you were treated by one of my former employees, Reginald Sterling. He acted outside the bank's ethics, and his actions are a stain on our institution. But more than that, I owe you a personal debt. My mother, she told me stories about a kind, wise man who worked at a small charity home many years ago. When she and I were at our lowest, she described him as her guardian angel. She told me how he taught me to identify different bird calls, how he patiently taught me how to whittle small wooden figures when I was just a boy. Your description in the news, it matched every detail. You were that man, weren't you?" Pembroke's eyes, usually sharp and businesslike, were now soft with remorse and profound respect. He had brought with him an apology far more meaningful than words, a substantial, personally endorsed grant from Zenith Bank for the Blackwood National Park, specifically earmarked for search and rescue modernization and for a new educational program. He also offered Elijah an honorary position on the park's advisory board, a role that would give him influence without the daily grind. This act of atonement was deeply personal, reflecting Pembroke's profound gratitude and a desire to right a decades-old wrong. For Lucas Thorne, the path to recovery was long, both physically and emotionally. His leg mended, but his shattered ego and fundamental misunderstanding of the world needed more profound healing. He had been a man blinded by arrogance, addicted to the fleeting validation of online fame. The near-death experience, coupled with Elijah's quiet heroism, had stripped him bare, forcing him to confront his own hubris. After his recovery, he sought out Elijah at his cabin, not with cameras rolling, but in quiet solitude. "Ranger Vance," Lucas said, his voice hesitant, raw with sincerity. "I was a fool, a proud, arrogant fool. I mocked everything you stood for, and it almost cost me my life. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to learn, I want to understand. I want to use my platform, not to chase fame, but to share true wisdom." This was Lucas's specific act of contrition, a genuine turning point. He asked Elijah to mentor him, not as a vlogger, but as a student of the wilderness. He proposed a groundbreaking collaboration using his vast online reach, not for self-promotion, but to educate millions about responsible adventuring, about the critical importance of respecting nature, and about the invaluable wisdom of experienced outdoorsmen. He actively used his platform to raise awareness about search and rescue safety, becoming a vocal advocate for the very principles he had once scorned. He even initiated a crowdfunding campaign that raised a significant sum for the Blackwood National Park's conservation efforts, directing all funds to a specific project Elijah had once passionately advocated for restoring a critically endangered osprey nesting site. Elijah Vance, after decades of self-imposed exile, found himself embraced by a world that once overlooked him. The public, captivated by his story, viewed him not just as a hero, but as a symbol of timeless wisdom. The Park Service, humbled by the incident and pressured by Pembroke's generous offer, officially invited Elijah to return as the Chief Wilderness Advisor for Blackwood National Park. This was a meaningful new opportunity, far beyond a mere ceremonial title. It allowed him to dedicate himself fully to the intricate dance between human safety and wilderness preservation, to impart his knowledge to a new generation, ensuring no one else would suffer the same fate as Lucas Thorne. Or worse. He was given a modest but well-equipped office at the main ranger station, outfitted with updated maps, satellite imaging systems he now understood how to interpret alongside his intuition, and even a new high-tech shortwave radio that crackled with clear, precise signals. He found immense satisfaction in training young rangers, patiently teaching them the subtle nuances of weather patterns, the nearly invisible signs of animal behavior, and the critical importance of reading the land itself, not just its digital representation. He was a bridge between the old ways and the new, a guardian of Blackwood's future. One crisp autumn evening, after a long day of mapping new, safer trail markers and advising on a particularly challenging wildlife relocation project, Elijah sat on the porch of his now fully restored cabin. The scent of pine was stronger than ever, mingled with the earthy aroma of damp leaves. Beside him, Alara Rossi, now a respected full-time wildlife biologist for the park, sat quietly, sketching a rare nocturnal bird. Her eyes, intelligent and curious, reflected the glow of the distant campfire she had built. "It's remarkable. Ranger Vance?" Alara said, her voice soft, breaking the peaceful silence. The way everything turned around, from almost losing Lucas to this whole new purpose for you. For the park, Elijah gazed at the twilight sky, a canvas of deep blues and fading oranges. He picked up a small, smooth riverstone, turning it over in his calloused fingers. "Life, Alara?" he mused, his voice a low rumble. "It's like the mountain itself, full of unexpected turns, hidden valleys and sudden storms. For a long time, I let the storms of my past keep me trapped in a valley of my own making. I believed my purpose was gone. My usefulness withered like an old tree." He sighed, a faint, almost imperceptible sound. "Lucas, in his arrogance, was a catalyst. He forced me to confront the very fears that had held me captive. He forced me to step out of the shadows. And you, Alara?" He turned to her, a rare, warm smile gracing his lips. "You were the first to see the light within those shadows. You saw the value in an old man's observations, in his instincts, when no one else would. You were the bridge that brought me back." Alara smiled back, her eyes shining with genuine admiration. "You taught me, Ranger Vance, that the most important data isn't always found in a spreadsheet or on a screen. Sometimes it's etched into the lines on an old map, or whispered by the wind through the pines. It's found in the wisdom of those who have truly listened to the land. Their contemplative dialogue was a quiet symphony of mutual respect and profound understanding." Elijah, the solitary hermit, had found his true purpose, not in isolation, but in connection. He had found a profound sense of belonging, not just within the rejuvenated Park Service, but within a community that now sought his wisdom, that revered him as a true guardian. His world, once shrunken by self-doubt and grief, had expanded exponentially, now vibrant with purpose, connection, and the harmonious rhythm of a life truly, deeply lived. The echoes of the lost trail had faded, replaced by the vibrant hum of a new, purposeful existence. 5 years later, the grand opening of the Elijah Vance Wing for Wilderness Wisdom at the illustrious Blackwood National Park Museum was more than just a ceremony. It was a profound celebration of a life well lived, a legacy meticulously forged. The air hummed with a joyful energy, a vibrant blend of awe and deep respect. Distinguished environmentalists, local dignitaries, and countless park visitors, from seasoned hikers to wide-eyed schoolchildren, filled the sprawling new wing. At the center of it all, and radiating a quiet, profound grace, stood Elijah Vance at 83. He was no longer the reclusive figure who had once sought solace in solitude. His silver hair, now a distinguished mane, framed a face etched with lines of wisdom and deep contentment. His eyes, once shadowed by past anxieties, sparkled with a profound inner light, reflecting the joy of a life richly lived and purpose fully realized. He conversed effortlessly with renowned conservationists, park architects, and eager young rangers. His voice, though softened by age, carrying the weight of unparalleled experience and genuine warmth. He had ascended beyond mere local renown. He had become a national icon, a living embodiment of the enduring value of traditional knowledge, the profound respect for nature, and the unwavering power of quiet courage. His life, once confined to a tiny, quiet cabin, now resonated with the grandeur of institutional recognition and the boundless joy of shared purpose. He had found not just success, but a deep, pervasive fulfillment, a life that pulsed with the very rhythm of his being, a testament to what an unwavering spirit could achieve. Among the throng of admirers, his presence a quiet, almost imperceptible pillar of support, stood Robert "Robbie" Vance. The intervening years had indeed been a relentless crucible for Robbie, forging a man starkly different from the slick, opportunistic figure he had once been. After serving his full sentence, he had embraced genuine rehabilitation, driven by a gnawing need to atone for his past betrayals, particularly towards his great-uncle. Elijah? He had started from the absolute bottom, volunteering in various community outreach programs, his hands-on experience humbling him in ways his previous life never had. Now he ran a remarkably successful, meticulously ethical nonprofit organization called Second Chances. His initiative provided comprehensive legal aid, vocational training, and mentorship to at-risk youth and individuals transitioning back into society after incarceration, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds struggling against systemic challenges. He often incorporated his own raw, unvarnished story of unchecked ambition and its devastating consequences into his counseling sessions, using his journey as a powerful cautionary tale against self-serving greed and the illusion of quick riches. He had not only painstakingly rebuilt his own life, but was now a quiet, powerful force for good, actively paying it forward, transforming his profound regret into tangible, meaningful social impact. He and Elijah had led through painstaking effort, candid conversations, and mutual vulnerability, carefully rebuilt their relationship. It wasn't the easy camaraderie of childhood, but a deeper, more resilient bond forged in forgiveness, mutual respect, and a shared understanding of life's complex, often challenging melodies. Robbie was no longer just his great-nephew. He was Elijah's quiet confidant, his most steadfast, if humble, supporter, a true testament to the healing power of reconciliation. Across the sweeping expanse of the museum's main gallery, her gentle smile a familiar comfort, sat Maria Rodriguez. Though her beloved local bodega still thrived, now expanded to include a small community library and a bustling coffee nook. She had, at Elijah's gentle insistence, become a frequent, cherished presence at all of Elijah's most significant public engagements. She always found a quiet corner, her eyes twinkling with pride as she watched her dear friend. Maria was the anchor to Elijah's past, a tangible reminder of the simple truths and unwavering belief that had sustained him through his darkest hours. Her presence, a silent testament to enduring friendship and loyalty, was a balm to Elijah's soul, grounding him amidst the newfound public recognition. She was a silent, unyielding pillar of support, a true and genuine friend who had never once doubted his inherent goodness. Elijah's profound transformation extended far beyond his personal triumphs and professional accolades. Driven by the searing memory of his own struggles, the decades of quiet obscurity, and the initial casual dismissiveness he had faced from powerful institutions, he had, with the fervent backing of Arthur Pembroke and Liam O'Connell, now a celebrated architect specializing in sustainable design, spearheaded the establishment of the Elijah Vance Institute for Wilderness Guardians. This groundbreaking initiative, housed in a beautifully renovated historic lodge within the park, was a state-of-the-art conservatory. It provided full scholarships, high-quality equipment, and intensive personalized mentorship to exceptionally talented young park rangers and wilderness guides from all socioeconomic backgrounds, ensuring that financial constraints would never again stifle a burgeoning talent for conservation and outdoor safety. Elijah often led masterclasses himself, his wise, calloused hands demonstrating the delicate intricacies of reading subtle animal tracks or the precise methods for predicting mountain weather patterns without modern instruments. His voice, now rich with accumulated wisdom, shared not just technical prowess but the profound philosophy of wilderness as a sacred trust, a conduit for understanding humanity's place in the natural world. He passionately preached that true wilderness guardianship transcended age, origin, or circumstance, emphasizing that the most profound connections to nature emerged from a deep, abiding respect for its power and a selfless dedication to its preservation. He meticulously ensured that no promising talent would ever be silenced by poverty, prejudice, or the cynical machinations of those who valued profit over purpose. His institute was a living, breathing antidote to the very systemic biases that had once almost extinguished his own flame, a testament to his belief that every wild space and every protector of it deserved to be cherished and celebrated. Later that evening, after the last of the museum patrons had departed and the soft hum of the evening cleaning crew filled the empty galleries, Elijah lingered in the new wing. Beside him, his arm respectfully linked with hers, was Ilara Rossi, now the esteemed chief biologist for Blackwood National Park. Her initial shyness long since replaced by a deep affection and admiration for Elijah. She had truly undergone a remarkable transformation, shedding her rigid adherence to pure scientific data for a more empathetic, holistic approach to conservation. Inspired directly by Elijah's example, "Ranger Vance," Ilara said, her voice soft, her gaze sweeping across the beautifully displayed artifacts, each a testament to his meticulous skill and his deep connection to the wild. "This wing, this institute, it's a living monument to your vision. It truly is magnificent." Elijah smiled, a deep, contented warmth spreading through him. He gently touched a restored antique compass, its brass gleaming under the spotlight. "It is not mine alone. Ilara," he mused, his fingers tracing the smooth, cool metal. "It is the symphony of every challenge faced, every quiet moment of dedication, every act of kindness received. And yours, of course," he added, with a twinkle in his eye, "for being stubborn enough to trust your instincts and to truly see beyond the official reports." Ilara chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "You taught me more than just the value of a species, Ranger Vance. You taught me humility. You taught me that true value isn't just in published data or academic papers, but in the enduring legacy of empathy, in the hidden lessons whispered by the wind, and in the lives touched by genuine wisdom. You showed me that sometimes the most important discoveries are the ones you can't quantify." "Indeed," Elijah replied, his eyes filled with a faraway wisdom. "For so long, I believed my life was destined for quiet obscurity, my purpose forgotten, my wisdom dismissed. I allowed the world and my own fears to silence me. But life, Ilara, is like a treacherous trail. There are broken pieces, moments of jarring silence, but if you persevere, if you keep listening, you will find its true path. And sometimes the most profound beauty emerges from the unexpected, from the seemingly lost, from the old ranger who still had a warning and a hope left to share." He looked out at the vast, silent museum hall, now illuminated by the gentle glow of the park's security lights. He had not only retrieved his past dignity, He had transformed it into an inspiring future. He had found not just his voice, but a chorus of new voices to nurture, ensuring that the ancient wisdom of the wilderness would continue to sing. He had faced the dismissiveness, the prejudice, the betrayal, and had answered not with anger, but with the undeniable, sublime language of his experience and his unwavering spirit. He had not just returned, he had bloomed anew, entering his second spring with grace, purpose, and the harmonious understanding that a life truly lived is a perpetual, evolving masterpiece, forever echoing the whispers of the wild. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.